Hello and welcome to Fit to Speak. I'm Eugene Obah. So glad to have you with us. The holidays in 2022 are about to come to an end. Elon Musk's run as CEO of Twitter may or may not come to an end. The World Cup has actually come to an end, and with the Georgia Senate runoff behind us, so too have the midterm elections. Today, I speak to Democratic strategist Kristen Foca on that Georgia Senate runoff, along with the successes and the lessons learned from these midterms and much more in a few minutes. But first, the death earlier this month of dancer Stephen Boss, better known as Twitch, who came to fame on the Fox reality competition show So You Think You Can Dance, and also served as a DJ and an executive producer on Ellen DeGeneres' daytime talk show, which ended earlier this year, has truly heightened the conversations that need to continue to happen about mental health. They are tough conversations. These are not easy conversations to have. But they are very necessary, especially in the times that we are in, especially when it comes to resources and funding. Um, these cannot be one-off conversations. These are conversations that need to happen daily, and the stigma has got to continue to be lessened. I think we're in a better place as a society now than we've been in previous years when it comes to the discussions and awareness of mental health. But more has to continue to be done. Again, these cannot be one-off conversations. These are conversations that need to happen daily. They really do. Twitch was an absolutely tremendous talent. Our condolences go out to his family and all that knew him. For those watching the show in the United States, the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline is one of many resources you or somebody you know can turn to 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The number is 988. Again, that's 988. You can call, text, or if you're on their website, can chat. That website is 988lifeline.org. Again, 988lifeline.org. We will have all of this information in the YouTube description below.
I want you to believe in America and continue to believe in the Constitution and believe in our elected officials most of all. Continue to pray for them because all the prayers you've given me, I felt those prayers. So I want to thank all of you as well because there's no excuses in life. And I'm not going to make any excuses now because we put up one heck of a fight. Don't let anyone tell you that we can't because I'm here to tell you we can.
And after a hard-fought campaign, or should I say campaigns, it is my honor to utter the four most powerful words ever spoken in a democracy. The people have spoken.
You just listened to both Herschel Walker and Senator Raphael Warnock, the latter of whom was reelected this time to a full 6-year term. We'll have Kristen's reaction to Senator Warnock's victory later in this segment, but when we recorded this interview prior to the runoff, I first asked Kristen about what a potential Warnock victory would look like if the result in November was anything to go by, meant in terms of the broader picture of divided government, especially in light of Republicans winning the House, and also now in the time since we initially recorded this with Kirsten Sinema of Arizona leaving the Democratic Party. She's changed her party affiliation to independent. Will a divided government actually get stuff done?
I think a lot of that remains to be seen as far as the majority in the Senate goes. I mean, and this will be crucial to allow Joe Biden to continue to select judges. So that is, very important. We are very happy to have picked up a seat. I think the only seat that flipped in the Senate this election was in Pennsylvania, right? And so that was a great pickup for the Democrats. You're definitely hoping that Warnock pulls it off, but it feels really good to go into this runoff knowing that no matter what, the Democrats have the majority in the Senate. So feeling really positive about that. And then as far as the Republicans controlling the House, it's certainly not ideal. And I think that they're going to have a lot of soul searching to do within their own party. And it'll be very interesting to see how that shakes out. But I mean, I'm hoping that we can find some compromise and get things done for the American people. I think that because it is such a slim majority for the Republicans, that there will be some room, hopefully, to work together and to pass some bipartisan legislation.
That's remarkable to see what these results are, given the fact that usually in these midterms, like the opposite party in power, there was supposed to be a red wave. There was not much of that, was there?
Well, so it's interesting. I think actually something that is unique about this election is that the waves, the blue waves, the red waves, they actually really varied by state. So, in New York, we did see a little bit of a red wave, right? The Republicans did get some pickups there. But then in Michigan, Pennsylvania, not only did we, stay blue or flip blue as far as the governorships or the Senate races, but also their state government also flipped blue. So there actually were a couple blue waves, specifically, and then there was at least a red wave in New York, and I guess you could say Florida as well.
Yeah, with DeSantis, handily beating Charlie Crist, who was a former Republican, in and of itself. And I think it's interesting what you said, in New York, and part of that, how much did gerrymandering play a role in that?
Well, right. So, without having a chance to dive super deep into all of these results yet, just because of course, like, counting has been ongoing and I'm wrapping up an election that I was working on. So I haven't been able to dig in super deep, but from what I've kind of just heard and seen, as a broad view, is that the Republicans really didn't pick up many, if any, seats based on issues. Anywhere where they picked up seats, it was due to gerrymandering and just obstacles that are beyond messaging. And so, I think we'll definitely need to take a closer look at that, see what can be done in the next 2 years to maybe, win some of those seats back, if it's even possible, or are they just so gerrymandered that they're a lost cause? But I do think that this election really ended up being, in some ways, best case scenario for Democrats, considering all of the obstacles and all of the historical data that supported what people thought would be a red wave. Personally, I wasn't really buying into all of that myself, only because I think that people really underestimated the Dobbs decision and the impact that would have on voters. And we've seen that it did have on voters. The general talk was that people have already forgotten about the abortion issue. And, a lot of people reported talking about or caring mostly about the economy. And while that is true, I also think that people don't just get over overturning 50 years of precedent in the matter of, a couple of weeks or a couple of months. And I think that this election really showed that women's rights do matter, or, human rights, I guess I should say, because abortion is not just a issue for someone who was born female. And I think that the voters really showed that we will turn out to defend abortion rights. And I think that that was really underestimated, maybe underreported. Also, some people may not have been comfortable saying that they cared greatly about this issue. You know, if people are deleting their ovulation tracker apps, are they necessarily going to report to a poll that abortion is at top of mind? Maybe not. So I really think that that was a huge factor in this election.
One other factor that impacted the election was Gen Z. On the November edition of the program, I pointed out a study from Tufts University that showed that those of that cohort voted for Democrats over Republicans by nearly a 2-to-1 margin. You can revisit that episode along with Kristen's response on Gen Z's impact right here on this YouTube channel. But I want to go now to the discussion of will he, won't he? That is, will President Biden run again for a second term? Should he run again for a second term? He did say that he will make an announcement early next year, but as we head back to our interview, I was watching CNN's coverage of the midterms, and Gloria Borger said something that I found quite remarkable, so much so that I was surprised that more of the media did not pick it up. It was actually quite fascinating for me. And what she said, and I'm paraphrasing here, is that given the success, relative success of the Democrats in the midterm elections, given the results, and now the fact that President Biden is the first president since FDR not to lose a Senate seat in the midterm election, the case can be made for the president to go out while the applause is highest. And remember, he's made multiple attempts over the years to run for president, and he's finally achieved that goal. But do these accomplishments also bolster the case for Biden to make a run for a second term?
Maybe. I honestly, I mean, I think this is a really tough question. And I feel like we're going to be asking ourselves this for at least the next, I would say, 2 years, except not really, because as we all know, campaigns for president start a year and a half, 2 years out. So I think we're going to see a lot of things shake out just in really the next few months. I think that President Biden has actually done a really wonderful job. We've passed a lot of legislation under his leadership. And, it's funny because a lot of people or a lot of Republicans would say, well, are you better off than you were 2 years ago? And expecting people to say no. And a lot of people say no or said no because gas prices and inflation. But it's like, but actually, 2 years ago, we were stuck inside our houses,
Yes.
you know,
And then
afraid
inflation,
to
this is a
leave and
global problem. It's a
well,
global thing.
right. Right. So, I don't really, people just, I guess, forget so quickly.
Yeah.
Everyone's just so happy to be out of the house and not wearing masks everywhere and we're vaccinated and all of that, that I guess all of a sudden people have forgotten that that even happened. I mean, it was like a time warp. So I do get it in some ways. But I would say we're a lot better off. If you just look at it, even from a very basic standpoint like that, of course, unemployment is really low right now, which is great. Inflation is happening around the world. This is not a unique American problem. Gas prices also have always gone up and down, up and down. It is a bit like these issues, those issues that I just mentioned are more of like a kind of typical ebb and flow. It's capitalism, it's supply and demand, it's, like that's what happens. And then, of course, we just finished, or sort of, I guess, finished in pandemic. I think we're in an endemic now, right?
Maybe.
Yeah. So, and then, yes, and then under Biden's leadership, Congress has passed several bills that are going to make an impact for decades to come. And so I think that he's done a really, really great job. And I felt like a lot of the negativity around him and his presidency has been unwarranted. And hey, when you're president, you're always going to get the buck stops with you. So,
Right.
if anything is going wrong, it's going to come down to you. And so I completely understand that. But that being said, I do think that he has a lot of accomplishments that he can tout. And so if he decides to run in 2024, I can already, hear what he'll be talking about on the campaign trail. And he still has 2 more years to go in this first term, which, again, now that Congress has shifted slightly, things will look different. But I still, I'm hopeful and confident that he can get a few more things accomplished in these next 2 years.
Kristen makes a very good point about campaigns starting early and taking a way too early look at 2024. I asked about other Republicans like Liz Cheney, Larry Hogan, Mike Pompeo, and John Bolton, among others, contemplating a run against the twice impeached and now criminally referred former U.S. president in the Republican primary.
I don't have a whole lot to say on it because, first of all, I try to not give Trump too much of my own attention or, breath for that matter, because I feel like we uplift his social stature way too much. And, I'd rather just, ignore
Cast
and
that off to the side.
let him fade away into the side. So of course I know he announced, but there is a lot of time, and I find it doubtful that just because he announced so early that will keep other people from running. I think that yes, the several people that you just named will still run, and it'll just be a matter of too many people could run, and then that means that Trump's base, that the people who really dug their heels in, and it's Trump or no one, they could persevere. Because if it's a really large pool, like that's how it was really in 2016, he could end up victorious again. But at the same time, I think that there are other people in the Republican Party who could also make a case for themselves. So I think it remains to be seen. I think that while Trump is obviously the front runner, I would not, I wouldn't place any bets right now. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, there was a lot of talk about candidate quality in this election cycle, especially on the cable news landscape. So much so that if I had a nickel for every time somebody on CNN, MSNBC, or elsewhere said that phrase, candidate quality, that I would be rich enough to buy Twitter. Hey, Elon, are you listening? But there was the Pied Piper strategy that was employed by many Democrats in a lot of races. And what that strategy employs is essentially making the weaker candidates of the other party in a general election palatable to primary voters. One of the beneficiaries of those efforts, particularly by the Democratic Governors Association in running ads, was Dan Cox, who lost to Governor-elect Wes Moore in Maryland, the latter of whom may still have won against former Commerce Secretary Kelly Schulz, but would have had to work a little harder to do so, as evidenced by this poll that was discussed on 538's YouTube channel.
We asked Democrats, would you consider Kelly Schulz or would you consider Dan Cox? Kelly Schulz is a more electable Republican in Maryland than Dan Cox is. That's what our polling shows.
So now that the dust has finally settled on these midterms, what are the New Year's resolutions for both Democrats and Republicans?
Well, it's interesting because something that I heard, maybe it was just earlier today, is, I think a big question is, can Trump candidates win without Trump on the ticket? So, that's something that I think Republicans are looking at now because, we saw that so many of the Trump-backed candidates did not win. And I think that a lot of that is because they don't have, these ultra MAGA people. They don't have mass appeal, when it's a statewide race. That's very different from a House race where, where there's gerrymandering, and even if it's not blatant gerrymandering, it's just like it's a much smaller community, than it is a statewide race for Senate, for governor, So we saw that the Trump picked candidates did not win. And is part of that because Trump himself wasn't on the ballot to, truly bring out his base? Did they not come out and vote for these people, even though Trump was saying that he liked them, so should you? But if he's not physically on the ballot, did they not come out to vote? So that's something that I think, Republicans will be looking into. And then as far as Democrats, I really feel like we need to drill down on our own messaging that has to do with what we have delivered for the American people, because we've delivered quite a lot when it comes to infrastructure, climate change, healthcare costs. Like my candidate that I just worked for, he helped pass the bill that's going to lower prescription drug costs for everyone on Medicare. So, their prescription drug costs will be $166 a month, period, no matter what. And that's huge. That's going to affect millions of people. And that's a Democratic backed bill. I mean, it ended up, thankfully being bipartisan, but that came out of a Democratic Congress. And so I feel like the Democrats really need to talk more about these things, what we've done, because again, already they've done a lot just in these past 2 years. And then of course, looking to the future of what else we can accomplish together if we can, stop talking about election denying, like things like that are just not true. And honestly, they're just distractions and
fraud.
Right. So if we can not, have to focus on that and instead be able to talk about the issues and how we are helping improve the lives of the American people and how we will continue to do that, I think that that's really what people want to hear. I mean, I heard a lot on the campaign that I just worked on that a lot of people, first of all, we got votes from Republicans, independents, Democrats. We won by 10 points against a self-funder, someone who put $5 million of his and his family's money into the campaign. And I heard often how that people really loved that my candidate, Congressman Andy Kim, was positive. That, our ads were mostly positive and that his message was positive and that he talked about what he has done and what he will do for the American people and how his focus is on making sure that his children and our children, grandchildren, nieces, nephews, that everyone can grow up in an America that is safe and prosperous and that, we all do have opportunity. And, I think that that is what people want. I think people want to, feel some sense of normalcy and not have so much hateful rhetoric constantly because it's exhausting. We all have very busy lives and a lot of stress and responsibilities. And the last thing we want to do is then also feel the weight of the world on our shoulders. Like we elect people so that they can do this job and they can govern on behalf of the people and so that we can live our lives and work our jobs and feed our families. And I think that the Democrats really need to focus in on that type of messaging and, just highlight what we've done more, better because we've actually done quite a lot. And I don't think it has to be just, that we're sane and believe in election results.
Right. So not chasing the shiny objects, if you will. Just focusing on really the kitchen table issues and the issues that finally, as promised, I recently caught up with Kristen to get her reaction to Senator Warnock's victory over Herschel Walker and what it means for Georgia and the implications that it has going forward. Here's what she had to say.
So I think, first of all, it shows that Georgia is truly a purple state. It's truly a swing state at this point. I mean, we even ended up with a split ticket situation, right? Where Kemp re-won as governor, or was reelected rather. And so that was a Republican who just was reelected as governor, but then they also reelected a Democrat to the Senate. So, it does show that split ticket voters exist. Like, yes, there had to be a runoff, but, Warnock did actually win more votes in the initial election as well. But, he just didn't reach the 50% threshold. So there had to be voters, right, who voted for Kemp and for Warnock. So it shows that the split ticket voter does still exist. And I'm sure that Democrats are going to really have our eye on Georgia in 2024. Biden, won in 2020 in Georgia by a very slim margin, but he did win. And we are likely going to need that state again in 2024. And so for Warnock to win, outright this time, and he reached the 50% that he needed, is very encouraging, I think, for the future. And especially just because we now have several years of 2 Democratic senators representing Georgia, because Warnock won in a special election before and then had to do this again. But now we have Ossoff and Warnock for the, future until, I guess, what was that, 2020 that they first were elected?
Yes, it was the first 2020, and then
Right,
and that was, I think, yet another runoff as well. So
right.
I
So,
mean
yeah.
that was just wild. So we'll have them for the foreseeable
For five
foreseeable future.
for 4 years, right? Because 6-year terms, then Ossoff will be up, but then we have Warnock for 6 years starting now. So that's great. And it's definitely nice to know that we have both seats there and we are locked in for a while. And yeah, and I do anticipate that we will be really not letting up on the gas probably in Georgia for the next 2 years. We're going to need every vote there in 2024, and I imagine both parties are really going to have their eye on Georgia.
A massive thanks to Kristen Foca for joining us on the program today. And one more thing before we go, we did get her reaction to this development from Georgia's Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, in which he wants Georgia's legislature to rid the state of runoff elections altogether. You'll see that bonus segment in the new year on this YouTube channel, so do make sure to subscribe and ring the bell right now so that when the video drops, you're not left out in the cold. Folks, we continue to need your help in finding broadcast industry professional and University of Maryland alum Terrence Woods, who's been missing since October of 2018. If you have any information as to Terrence's whereabouts, you're asked to call the Idaho County Sheriff's Office at 208-983-1100. That's 208-983-1100. You can also reach out to us on our social media accounts, which you'll see at the end of the program, and we'll pass any information along to them. Thank you so much for watching. A programming note, our 4th season of Fit to Speak will begin March 30th, 2023. But to tide you over, our YouTube channel will continue to have some good content. In fact, dare I say, damn good content from our entertainment division. As you're out entertaining yourself on New Year's Eve, when the clock strikes midnight on January 1st, we'll have an announcement on this channel regarding our entertainment division's soon-to-launch food program, Damn That's Good, where yours truly travels across DC, Maryland, and Virginia, better known as the DMV, in search of the best restaurants. So do subscribe to our channel, youtube.com/the channel. It's going to be a fun show. There will be a lot more where that came from in 2023, so you better stay tuned to catch it all. In the meantime, don't forget to follow us on all of our social media accounts for more information, including all of the bonus content that you'll see from today's show. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell on our YouTube channel so that you do not miss any of our episodes. And please consider subscribing to Substack and Patreon so that you can support independent content creators. Until next time, I'm Eugene Obah, and remember, we will not be silenced.